You ever had that one neighbor who thinks the whole world revolves around them? Well, imagine coming home after a long day, only to find their car parked smack dab in your driveway. Annoying, right? But what if I told you this wasn't just a one-time thing? Oh no. This was just the beginning of the most insane neighborhood war you've ever heard of. HOA drama, screaming showdowns, petty revenge, and the most satisfying tow truck moment of all time. And trust me, the way this ends, you're not gonna believe it. Buckle up, because this is Karen versus Driveway, the ultimate battle. Hello beautiful people. Before we dive in, a small click from you can help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button and be part of the journey. Let's go. I came home after a long, exhausting day, just ready to kick off my shoes and unwind. But as I turned into my driveway, something was off. Someone else's car was sitting right there, bold as day, like it had a reserved spot. At first, I thought maybe a visitor had parked in the wrong place by accident. Maybe a delivery guy? A friend stopping by? But no, this wasn't some innocent mistake. This was a full-on invasion of my property. I honked, thinking someone might pop out and move it. Nothing. I walked around the car, checking for a note. Nothing. I knocked on a few doors, but no one seemed to know who the car belonged to. Finally, I called the HOA, expecting them to handle it. They gave me the usual runaround. We'll look into it. I should have known that meant absolutely nothing. Just as I was debating whether to call a tow truck, I heard the sound of flip-flops slapping against pavement. A woman strutted over, completely unbothered, holding an iced coffee like she was on a casual morning stroll. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize. She just took a long sip of her drink, looked at me and said, "Oh yeah, that's mine." I figured it was fine since there was space. There was space. My own driveway. I was stunned. Who just assumes they can park in someone else's driveway like it's a free parking lot? I told her as calmly as I could that this was private property. She gave me a dismissive wave and muttered something about moving it later. I should have pressed harder, but I let it slide, thinking it was a one-time mistake. The next morning, my worst fears were confirmed. Her car was back in my driveway. Same spot. Same level of audacity. Now I was angry. I knocked on her door, and this time she took forever to answer. When she finally did, she looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, I forgot to move it," she said, yawning. "I'll do it in a bit." A bit? Oh, absolutely not. I told her in no uncertain terms that this couldn't happen again. She gave me the most Karen eye roll I had ever seen and slammed the door in my face. I was fuming. I called the HOA again, but as expected, they were about as useful as a chocolate teapot. "We'll issue a warning," they said, which I knew meant they'd send a mildly worded email that she'd probably never read. That night, I sat in my car, staring at her vehicle, debating my options. Should I call the cops? Would they even do anything? Should I just tow it myself? But just as I was about to make a decision, I noticed something strange. Her car was still in my driveway, but she was nowhere to be found. No lights on in her house. No movement inside. It was like she had just vanished. I knocked on her door again. Nothing. At this point, I was done playing nice. The next morning, when her car was still there, blocking my space, I made the call. It was time for tow truck justice. The tow truck arrived like a knight in shining armor, its bright orange lights flashing in the early morning sun. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching as they hooked up Karen's car. I could already hear the dramatic background music playing in my head. Just as the truck started lifting the front wheels, a blood-curdling scream erupted from across the street. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" There she was. Hair disheveled, bathrobe flapping like a superhero cape, coffee cup shaking in her hand as she sprinted toward my driveway. "You can't do this," she shrieked, voice reaching octaves that surely shattered windows in nearby houses. "This is illegal. You have no right." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I do. Private property." Repeated warnings. "Call the cops if you want, but that car is going for a little ride." Karen pulled out her phone so fast, you'd think she was about to report a life-threatening emergency. She dialed 911, voice trembling with fake distress. "Yes, hello? My neighbor is stealing my seat." The tow truck driver barely held back a laugh. A cop actually showed up within minutes, likely already familiar with Karen's brand of nonsense. He took one look at the situation, then at me, then at the tow truck driver, then back at Karen. "Ma'am," the cop sighed, rubbing his temples. "This car was parked on private property without permission." He's well within his rights to have it towed. Karen's jaw dropped. But, this isn't fair. The cop turned to me. You want to press charges for trespassing? I was tempted. Oh, I was so tempted. But I settled for a smug smile as Karen stomped away, arms flailing. She disappeared into her house, slamming the door so hard it probably scared the squirrels out of the trees. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. The very next day as I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. There it was again. The same car. The same audacity ***. But this time there were notes taped to my door. I peeled them off one by one, reading Karen's angry, passive-aggressive masterpieces. ***, towing my car was an unnecessary and petty move. ***, driveways should be community property for all neighbors. Good luck getting rid of me. It was on now. She thought this was a game she was about to learn the hard way that I play to win. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through my recent calls and dialed the tow company. Hey, it's me again. Yeah, same car. Same driveway. Same nonsense. The tow truck arrived faster than Amazon Prime delivery. This time I recorded the whole thing. The slow lift of the front wheels, the beep 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 as it backed away, the sheer melodic beauty of Karen's horrified shriek when she ran outside just in time to see her car disappear into the distance. You have no idea who you're messing with, she screeched. Oh, I think I do, I shot back. And I think you have no idea how towing fees work. The next day I sent the video to every single neighbor in our HOA. The group chat exploded. Karen, of course, tried to paint herself as the victim. This is harassment. She whined. But then something beautiful happened. One by one, neighbors started sharing their own Karen horror stories. She had stolen packages. She had let her dog poop in people's yards without picking it up. She had even tried to fine people for having ugly holiday decorations. The HOA, after months of being useless, had no choice but to step in. They called an emergency meeting. Karen showed up looking smug, thinking she was about to get me punished. But what she didn't know was that I came prepared. I pulled up every HOA email, every complaint, every video, and let the evidence do the talking. For the first time ever, the HOA actually took action. New rules were passed. Repeat offenders would face escalating fines, and multiple violations could lead to a property lien. Karen went bright red. You can't do this, she sputtered. This is unfair. Her own husband was sitting in the back, head in his hands, looking like a man who regretted every decision he had ever made. And just like that, the HOA battle had turned into a Karen meltdown of epic proportions. But little did I know she wasn't done yet. The next morning I stepped outside expecting peace, expecting that maybe, just maybe, Karen had finally learned her lesson. But as soon as I opened my front door, I froze. There was her car. In my driveway. Again ***. But this time she had leveled up her pettiness. She hadn't just parked in my driveway. She had parked in a way that completely blocked me in ***. I couldn't leave. I couldn't even back out. She had trapped me in my own home out of pure, unhinged spite. I stood there for a moment, blinking, trying to process the sheer audacity of it all. Then I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly doubled over. Because at this point, she wasn't just annoying, she was straight up unhinged. Oh, she wanted war? She was about to get it. I pulled out my phone and called the tow truck. Again. Hey, it's me. Yep. Again. 15 minutes later, the tow truck arrived. But before they could even start hooking up the car, the screeching began. Stop. Stop right now. You can't do this. Karen burst out of her house like a feral raccoon in a bathrobe, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. I leaned against my porch railing, sipping my coffee, watching the show. I gave you so many chances, I said. You did this to yourself. She stomped over, trying to physically block the tow truck from doing its job. You are a bully, she screamed. You are harassing me. This is against the law. I didn't say anything. I just smirked and gestured to the officer standing right behind her. She turned, her eyes widening in horror. That's right. This time I had called the cops too. The officer, a middle-aged guy who looked like he had dealt with way too many Karens in his career, sighed. Ma'am, he said, already exhausted, step aside. Karen, still in full meltdown mode, pointed directly at me. This man is a threat to this community, she wailed. He is targeting me. He's trying to make me homeless. The cop turned to me, then back to her. Ma'am, he's just making sure his own driveway stays clear. Karen wasn't listening. She collapsed onto the ground, full-on dramatic fainting pose, as if she had just been personally victimized by my driveway. The officer pinched the bridge of his nose. Do you need medical assistance? No, she whimpered. I need justice. Meanwhile, the tow truck driver, clearly used to this kind of nonsense, just kept working. Within minutes, Karen's car was hooked up and taken away. That should have been the end of it. Really should have. But just when I thought I had finally beaten her, Karen pulled her final, most ridiculous move yet. She tried to get me fined by the HOA. That's right. The same HOA that had already ruled against her. She filed a formal complaint saying that I was creating a hostile living environment by repeatedly towing her car. The HOA, probably sick of both of us at this point, scheduled one last meeting to resolve the issue once and for all. I showed up fully prepared. I had copies of every complaint I had ever filed. Video footage of every time she had parked in my driveway. Screenshots of her insane notes taped to my door. Karen, on the other hand, showed up with tears and dramatic sobs. He's ruining my life, she cried. I don't even feel safe in my own home anymore. I calmly turned to the HOA board and played the footage of her blocking me in. The room went dead silent. Karen's husband, who had come to support her, put his face in his hands. He looked like a man rethinking every decision that had led him to this moment. The HOA president sighed and turned to Karen. Ma'am, she said, we are fining you for repeated violations of community parking rules. You are also required to pay back all towing fees before you can register a new vehicle. Karen gasped so hard she nearly choked on her own outrage. You can't do this, she screeched. Oh, we absolutely can, the president said. And if it happens again, further action will be taken. That was it. The HOA had finally grown a backbone. Karen stormed out, screaming about suing everyone within a 5-mile radius. Her husband followed behind, but not before giving me an exhausted nod, like he understood my pain. And just like that, the battle was over. Or so I thought. Because Karen had one last move left. The neighborhood was finally at peace. No more random cars in my driveway. No more passive-aggressive notes. No more HOA drama, at least none involving me. I should have known it was too good to last. 3 weeks went by and Karen had been eerily silent, no screaming. No petty revenge tactics. Nothing. It was suspicious, like when a horror movie villain disappears, and you just know they're planning something worse. Then early one morning I woke up to the sound of a loud truck engine rumbling outside. I peeked through my curtains. I could not believe my eyes. Karen had parked a U-Haul truck in my driveway. Not next to my driveway. Not near my driveway. Directly in it. It was moving day. She was leaving. And in one final act of petty defiance, she had chosen to block me in one last time. I stepped outside, slowly clapping. Well, you just couldn't help yourself, could you? Karen smirked, looking way too proud of herself. I figured since I was moving out, I might as well enjoy the driveway one last time. Her husband, who was loading boxes, looked like a broken man. You sure you don't want to live somewhere with a shared parking lot? I asked, sipping my coffee. Since you love community driveways so much? She rolled her eyes. Oh, I won't have to deal with petty neighbors where I'm going. Yeah. I said. Well, let me give you a proper send-off. I pulled out my phone. Wait, what are you doing? She shrieked. You didn't think I was gonna let this slide, did you? She sprinted toward me, arms flailing. You can't call a tow truck. I'm moving. Then move your truck off my property, I said, smiling sweetly. Give me an hour, she pleaded. I tapped my phone. No. You've had enough chances. Her husband, who had reached his breaking point, snapped. For God's sake, Karen, move the damn truck. The entire neighborhood stopped and stared. Karen turned, absolutely stunned. She opened her mouth to argue, but her husband was already climbing into the U-Haul, shaking his head. You're insane, he muttered. I should have left you here. He backed the truck out of my driveway without another word. Karen stood there, stunned, speechless for the first time in her life. Then in one final dramatic exit she screamed, asterisk asterisk, you haven't seen the last of me. Asterisk asterisk. She climbed into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and they drove off. The entire neighborhood cheered. People came out of their houses. One of my neighbors popped open a bottle of champagne. Someone even suggested we install a driveway monument to commemorate my victory. For the first time in months, I stepped onto my driveway knowing it would stay mine. Karen was gone. The HOA actually started enforcing rules. And I slept like a king. But the best part? A few weeks later, I heard from a neighbor in another HOA community that Karen had already started causing trouble in her new neighborhood. I laughed. Good luck, I told them. You're gonna need it.